He had won the year before, and he was confident he could do it again now. This was his hometown, after all. He trained on these streets. He knew these hills. Only one runner remained between him and a second Boston Marathon victory. For the last few miles, he had lagged behind, but he was finally closing in on his competitor, who had gone out too fast and now seemed to be struggling. As he surged past that younger challenger, he gave him a pat on the back as if to say, "Nice try." And with that last runner behind him, he was home free. But before either could turn right on Hereford and left on Boylston, they had to make it through the hills in Newton. With just a 10K left, both men were hurting, and those 4 hills felt insurmountable. Before he could crest that final hill, his younger rival reclaimed the lead with one last push and used that momentum to cruise to a win. The feeling of defeat could only be described with one word: heartbreak. Today is Saturday, August 23rd, 2025, and on this day in 1975, two-time Boston Marathon champion Ellison Tarzan Brown died at the age of 61. In this episode, we will learn more about Brown's background as a member of the Narragansett tribe of Rhode Island, hear how he famously overtook hometown favorite Johnny Kelley during the 1936 Boston Marathon, which led to the naming of the infamous Heartbreak Hill, and then sit down for a conversation with Brown's granddaughter, Anna, to hear what Tarzan Brown was like off the race course. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. It is once again Salty Saturday, which means that this episode is sponsored by Salt Stick. And today I want to talk about a less sexy product that they offer than the fast chews that I've told y'all about every Saturday for the last 8 weeks. So, we all know how important electrolytes are, right? Basically, when you sweat, you lose more than just water. And so you need to add back in the sodium, magnesium, potassium, and other minerals in addition to just drinking plain water. And so that is where Salt Stick comes in. They have those great fruity, chewable tablets called Fast Chews, which I love to use as part of my hydration and fueling strategy while running. Except that there are times when the last thing I want to do is chew anything at all, especially something even slightly salty. And this is something that I have struggled with during my longer runs this time of year when it is hot and especially when it's super sunny. And so instead of reaching for Salt Stick's Fast Chews, I will use their electrolyte capsules. So basically, you just swallow these with a sip of water like you're taking a pill, and you get all of the same benefits as the chews without the hassle of actually chewing. So if you're listening to me describe this and thinking, I like the fruity flavors of Fast Chews and the capsules take away the fun, then stick with the Fast Chews. But the capsules can be a lifesaver late in a race or training run if you stop being able to tolerate different flavors and textures quite so well. So for me, it's nice to have both handy and then play it by ear. Whichever way you lean, you can save 20% off your order from Salt Stick by using the link in the episode description. Happy Salty Saturday, everybody! Now, let's talk about Tarzan Brown. Ellison Brown was the fifth of 7 children born in 1913 in Rhode Island, the land on which his ancestors within the Narragansett tribe had lived for millennia. He was an athletic child, often running through forests and climbing trees, which earned him the nickname Tarzan. Brown dropped out of school in the 7th grade, and it was around that same time that he began running long distances. He was noticed by a local coach named Tippy Salameno, who was impressed with how well 12-year-old Tarzan Brown could keep up with the older, more experienced runners along a 14-mile course. Salameno became Brown's trainer, and as the 1930s began, so too did Tarzan Brown's competitive running career. He ran the Boston Marathon for the first time in 1933 and finished 14th, then ran again in 1934 when he finished 32nd. 1935 was supposed to be his breakthrough, but Brown's mother died just 2 days before the race. So to honor her memory, Tarzan made a running singlet from her dress and wore it during the race. And then his shoes began to bother him near the 20-mile mark of the marathon, so he took them off and ran the final 10K barefoot. Tarzan Brown placed 13th. But it was 1936 when he truly cemented his place in history. The favorite for the race that year was hometown hero Johnny Kelley, who had won in 1935, but when the gun went off, it was Brown who surged ahead at world record pace. The blistering pace caught up to Brown a bit in the final third of the race, and Johnny Kelley was able to catch him during the Newton Hills. So there are 4 hills at this stage in the race, and as someone who has run them, they seem to go on forever. Before I ever ran Boston, I pictured just rolling hills, and they're less steep, but they just keep going and going and going, and that is what killed you. So Kelley finally overtook Brown during this portion of the race, and then he famously patted Brown on the back as he did so. And I'm not sure if this was a genuine, like a good job kind of gesture, or if it was more of a condescending, nice try, rookie kind of thing, but it was exactly the motivation that Tarzan Brown needed to take back the lead and win the race. And it was Johnny Kelley's heartbreak atop that hill in Newton, Massachusetts, that earned it the moniker Heartbreak Hill, which we still use today. So Tarzan Brown won the 1936 Boston Marathon. Then he went on to compete in the Olympic Marathon in Berlin later that year. He ran the race again in 37 and 38, and something I found really interesting when I was going through the archival results is that in 1938, Brown finished 53rd of just 61 men with a time of 3:38:39. But then he came back the next year. He fueled with hot dogs and a milkshake, as one does, and then he won the race in a new American record of 2:28:51, which is nearly 70 minutes faster than he had ran the previous year, which is crazy. Tarzan Brown died after being hit by a van exactly 50 years ago today, leaving behind a wife, 4 children, and 13 grandchildren. And I recently had the privilege of sitting down with one of those 13 grandchildren, Anna Brown Jackson, to hear about what Tarzan Brown was like off the race course. Let's go to that interview. All right, I am here with Anna Jackson Brown, who is the granddaughter of Ellison Tarzan Brown. How are you doing today, Anna?
Good.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about your background before we get into your grandfather?
Yeah. Actually, my maiden name is Brown. So my married name is Jackson. So that's why I hyphenate it like that.
Okay.
So it's okay. So a little of myself, you said?
Yeah, yeah. Where were you
Okay.
born? Were you
I,
born in Rhode Island?
I was not born in Rhode Island. I was born in Connecticut. And but most of my family has been from Rhode Island, from the Charlestown, Rhode Island area. Both of my parents are enrolled members of the Narragansett tribe, as well as their parents. So I have 2 adult sons, and I work at the University of Rhode Island. I've been there for 25 years. I'm an accountant. So this journey with my grandfather has kind of started more since about 2015 after my grandmother's death, because she was in charge of his things and everything, and she asked we, the grandchildren, keep things going and that we handle matters regarding him. So it's been quite a journey. I've met so many wonderful people like yourself, so many people who are interested in his story, and really a lot of times he's been like an unsung hero because a lot of people aren't aware of things like even Heartbreak Hill and how it got its name. But I'm hoping, and our family is hoping, that by sharing his story and the more publicity it gets, that we can eventually build a statue there at Heartbreak Hill in his honor.
Oh, that would be fantastic, and we can definitely get into that and how it got its
Mhm.
name from
Yeah,
him. Let's talk
yeah.
about your relationship with your grandfather growing up. What are your earliest and most vivid memories as a child with him?
I remember him very well. One thing, we had no idea that he was a marathon runner or winner. He didn't talk about it with us, but
Wow.
we we knew that he was important for some reason because every time we went someplace, everyone knew him. Everybody. Like we'd go into the store and people would wait there or walk up to him and shake his hand, or we'd go, he'd bring us to the pond to get shellfish and everything, and people would wait on the side till we got out of the water. They'd shake his hand, talk to him a little bit, you know what I mean? But I knew he was important, but I didn't know why. So a lot of people didn't know our family. A lot is because of him. Like even my grandparents and my parents, when we go any place, we kind of became a well-known family, and that's because of my grandfather. But we were also in a small Rhode Island, small as it is, you can get through the whole state in 1 hour, and from Massachusetts to Connecticut. So because of him, especially in Rhode Island, people did know us, and I remember we used to live next door to him and my grandmother when we were little kids. My younger brother and I, our uncle let us live there at his house, and he would like show us. He'd bring us shell fishing, like I said. So I everyone had a job in the family, no matter how old or how young you were. You had to kind of earn your keep and do chores and things like that, even when you were visiting. So our grandmother would watch us when our parents worked, and my grandfather and my dad would bring me. I would stay with my dad sometimes. Like, he was a stonemason also. My grandfather was a stonemason, so a lot of times I would go with them in the summer to go to the pond to get oysters or crabs or whatever. And my job was to measure, to make sure I had a flat stone, to make sure nothing was undersized. So that stayed in the basket that my dad would tie around his waist. My grandfather had one tied around his waist. They had wader boots and, all the gear that goes with being a shell fisherman. So I do remember that fondly. And after we'd go, my grandfather would kind of, he had a funny laugh, like he was, and he would play tricks a little bit, like playing, joking around, not teasing us, but joking around with us. Like, he caught an eel a few times, and he would eat it. He would fry the eel. He'd clean it and he'd fry it. Yeah, and he would play like the eel was gonna jump out of the pan, but it wasn't really. He was cooking it, so he teased us, and all the grandkids would gather around the stove as he was cooking. They know he's gonna get out, Grandpa. He's gonna get out. No, he's not, and he'd throw the thing back in the pan. But he loved spaghetti, so he would cook uh like spaghetti every night, and I think a lot was because of his running career. They ate a lot of pasta
Oh
also.
yeah.
He would cook different types. Like, some nights he'd cook some with a sweet sauce, and some nights it would be spicy. And he would tell us ahead of time what sauce, because a lot of my parents and my aunts and uncles, the rest of their kids, would come over, and all of the cousins would play together outside while the adults talked in the house after work every day. My grandmother watched a lot of us, so they'd have to come pick up their kids.
That sounds like a,
And
a good a
yeah,
good family dynamic, and you got
yes,
to spend a
yes,
lot of time
yeah,
together.
yes, we did. We really did. We really did spend a lot of time, and even now today we're still close. We talk very regularly, and not as much as, you don't see each other every day like when you're a little kid, but we still are very close, all of us. So I just have very, very fond memories. We used to play baseball in their yard, my grandparents' yard, and my grandfather had stones or car mats or whatever laying on in the back of the house, and he would let us use the stones for the bases, but he'd say we better not break them, and we had to put them back in the pile when we were done. So just things like that.
Sure.
A lot of the older grandkids, because I was down near the younger side, a lot of the older ones would say how he would bring them fishing, but using flashlights, like at nighttime.
Oh,
So yeah, he'd like do like flash fishing, and the fish would I guess kind of freeze when you put the flashlight on them, and you could catch them and everything. But I just remember my grandfather was very free. He was very free. He lived so close to the earth, it wasn't even funny. I mean, I think he really didn't need a house. I think my grandmother needed the house. He would have been perfectly fine living outside, you know what I mean? Because he was just so close to nature. Um, People used to visit because they lived on the road where Burlingame Park is in Rhode Island. It's called, and also Watchog Pond, but a lot of people call it Burlingame now, but we always called it Watchog. And people would get a turtle, they'd get a turtle or find a turtle, and they'd say, I know exactly who we're supposed to bring this to. We should bring this to Tarzan Brown. So people would just stop by. The door was I can't remember one time when my grandparents didn't have company. If it wasn't us, other people were visiting, mainly relatives, but also friends and neighbors. You know, the old country ways are
yeah.
different than they are today. You know, you could just drop by and, they'd invite you in and share whatever they had. And I think that was really, really nice. That's some of my most fond memories.
That's great. Now, so as a child, you were not aware that he was not only a runner, but a very
A
famous,
winner.
very successful runner. When
Right.
did you learn about that and how did that work out?
I think and I was also talking with some of the other grandkids. They didn't know either. He was just grandpa to us, and I don't know why he didn't talk about it with us. I know his kids knew, but I had overheard him one time talking with one of his running buddies about Germany. I didn't know he had gone there for the U.S. Olympics in 1936 with Jesse Owens. I had no idea, but I overheard him talking. So, I was raised in the generation you don't butt into adults' conversations. So after I asked him, I said, Grandpa, were you in the war? And he started giggling. He said, no, but he didn't tell me why he was over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so I think I became more aware of it after he died. And we're seeing the articles, a lot of people coming over to mourn him and things like that. And, that's when I came more aware. And also the other grandkids, because we all talked about it after. We became more aware of who he actually was and what his past was, but he didn't talk about it with us. You know what I mean?
did you ever get a chance to ask your grandmother about what it had been like when he was racing?
I had talked to my grandmother so much. I was very close with my grandmother through the years, and actually, I think a large part of the reason at first why we didn't really talk about him as much, a couple of weeks before his death, my grandmother had had a severe stroke.
Oh, wow.
So she was in the hospital at South County Hospital, and that's the last time I saw my grandfather. My parents drove all of us down to the hospital to see my grandmother and visit her. And my grandfather was sitting in the window in the hospital. He looked like a helpless kid because my grandmother held everything down, and I mean everything. Um, he was away a lot traveling because of his marathon times and everything like that. So she kind of was like a single parent a lot of times. until he came back. So that's the last time I had seen him. And the doctors had said they didn't want her to even go to the funeral because they were nervous and it would have been too much stress for her. But she said she is going. So through the years, we didn't really bring him up all the time, especially when after he first died, we waited till she kind of talked about him, and we always ask questions through the years, but we tried not to. The doctor said not to upset her, so I think that was part of we were trying to make her as happy and comfortable as possible. But of course, we did always talk about him. He was still, his memory was still alive with us, and I had extensive conversations with her, but I think the ones that mattered more was when I got older. It's different when you're talking as a little kid than as when you're talking as a young woman. So when she got on hospice in maybe it was 2014, was on hospice. She was like 95 at the time. And so I had a lot of questions, and I would write down my questions, and we slept overnight. She didn't want to go into a nursing home, and the grandkids took care of her. We all took turns. Some stayed overnight, some stayed over days, and she was just an awesome grandmother. Like I said, she took care of all of us. So when our parents worked or anything, she'd always provide a listening ear. You might not like what she told you, but she would come right out with it. So I had moved in with her some nights, and another cousin stayed over other nights. And I asked her so many questions, a lot of things. I had started having like memories of things. I would say, Granny, do you remember such and such? And then we would talk about it. She was surprised how much I remembered. And so then anything she said, I have a lot to tell you. So anything she told me, she said not to come in with a tape recorder or else I'd never come again. So I would write things down. Everything she said, I wrote down. So
Wow.
I'm so grateful for that time that we had. She had died like the next year in 2015 in the fall, and I'm just glad we got to spend a lot of time together, and that she could live out her days. She passed away. She was 96 years old. But before she died, I told her, Granny, you're the real marathon winner. And she had a little tear in her eyes, and she smiled. Because like I said, she really held everything down for the whole family. You know what I mean? Just
Absolutely.
amazing, amazing.
That's
So
incredible. And is it your mother or your father that is one of
my dad,
Okay.
my dad is the youngest of the four children. The oldest son, and they're all like 2 years apart. Well, they're all deceased now. But the oldest one was Ellison Jr., and we called him Sonny. The next one was Ethel, who was also my grandmother's name was Ethel, and we called her Sis. These, nicknames stick. And then the third child was named Marlene, and my dad was the youngest. His name was Norman Senior, because my brother is the junior. But we called him Thunderbolt.
Very
And
cool.
and
Does that have anything to do with running? Is he fast as well?
well, he was a good runner. He was very fast, and what had come about with that is he was the youngest of the four kids, like I said. So a lot of times the youngest is kind of struggling to find their own spot in the family.
Yeah.
And he went to school, and there were like two or three other Norman Browns at the school. And so he came home. He didn't like that. So he told his mom he needed to change his name. And this was like in kindergarten. And she said to him, you'll have to talk to your father about that, because they had named him Norman. And he went and talked to my grandfather, and he said, Dad, I need to change my name. So my grandfather, I guess, asked him what the problem was, and he said there were two or three other Norman Browns in the school. And my grandfather said, well, I can see where that would pose a problem. He said, did you have any names in mind? He said, no. So he said, how about Thunderbolt? Would you be Thunderbolt? He said, yes, I'll be Thunderbolt. So everyone called him that from that day forward. I had no idea who Norman was, even when I went to school, because everyone called him Thunderbolt, just like I didn't know my grandfather Tarzan's real name was Ellison, because everyone called him Tarzan every place we went.
Wow.
So, yeah. The
Wow.
only one who called him Ellison was my grandmother if she was upset.
When you pull out the full name, that's
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
that's when you're in
It was
trouble.
like, Ellison. I was like, oh boy.
Oh, how funny. Did any members of your family end up being marathoners? You mentioned your dad ran some. Did anybody run Boston or marathons in general?
Uh, Nobody ran any marathons. My uncle Sonny, like I said, Ellison Jr., there's pictures of him even on the website. I think my grandfather was entering him in running contests and stuff in maybe Hyde Park, Massachusetts or something, but he didn't like it. And I got a chance to talk to him also before he had passed away. So he was saying he didn't like it because right off the bat they put him in the category. He was like in high school, and they put him running against college kids. But because he was Tarzan Brown's son, they said they'll have to handicap him. So they
Wow.
let all those other college kids get a head start and made him start way after. So, it already put a negative taste in his mouth. You
Oh,
know
I
what I
can
mean?
imagine.
He
Definitely.
didn't, he didn't like it. Yeah.
Wow.
I guess he liked running at first, but then he didn't like it after that. And that happened more than once. So where it left a bad taste in his mouth, and he didn't want to run anymore. But I will say, like, of all the grandsons, there were 13 grandchildren, and now there are 10. So of all the grandsons, they were all very athletic. Every single one of them. They won races in school, wherever we went. Some were all state. They were into wrestling, basketball, football, whatever sport there was available. The grandsons were in it. Not the granddaughters really, but the grandsons were all very athletic and very good runners, all of them. I mean, we're all older now. The youngest grandchild now is in his mid 50s. So, you know,
Now, what has
that's
your family's relationship been with the Boston Marathon in the over the last 50 years since your grandfather did pass away?
over the last 50 years. I don't, they had stayed in touch with my grandmother
Okay.
when she was here. She didn't get a chance to go there to the Boston Marathon again. I guess she did travel more when they were married and before they had kids and everything. Um, so, and some of them had come down and visited my grandmother. Like, she would tell us how my grandfather would be at a race or whatever with some of his other buddies on his team, and then they would go to eat, and he'd call my grandmother and say, he said, me and about maybe 10 or 15 are coming. We're going to have to eat. So she would cook for them, and she didn't have the stoves like we have today. She had the old fashioned, this was in maybe 40s or something like that, 30s or 40s. And she had the old stove that you had to put wood in one side. And, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how she did it. And she had absolutely delicious meals. She was an awesome cook. She had desserts and everything too. So she like cooked full meals. But what had happened in 2016, the family got invited to the Boston Marathon. So some of the grandkids went, some of the great grandkids went, along with their spouses. And when we went there, they were like so happy to meet us, so excited and stuff like that. Some of them knew my grandmother. And when we went to all the ceremonies at that time. It was celebrating 120 years of the Boston Marathon, and it was 80 years of Heartbreak Hill and 50 years of women running the marathon. So that was like the most awe-inspiring moment. A lot of the grandkids always wanted to go to the Boston Marathon. It was like on our to-do list, but we just didn't get a chance. So we did go when they invited us, and we went in the room, and it was like, oh, here they are, here they are. I was like, oh boy. And they all knew us. They all knew my grandfather, all the runners through all the years who were still alive, the Boston Marathon winners. So we met Bobby Gibb. We met just so many, even the most recent people who even ran regularly, you know what I mean? And all the BAA people, it was just so awe-inspiring, and it just was just a humbling situation. But when we went in, we were going to sit towards the back table, and some of the people, there was a woman named, I want to say Gloria was her first name, and I can't think of her last name off the top of my head, but she was already older. She had like the largest Boston Marathon collection of items. And she came up to us. She said, no, you come sit with us. So we sat in the front with her. And she said, I remember your grandfather. She said, we went to Charlestown and they all came and visited and stuff like that. They had like a fundraising spaghetti dinner for a couple of family members here, and my grandfather invited the BAA people, and they all came. A lot of them came back then. We weren't born yet, but they were telling us this, and they were saying that they remembered my grandmother cooking and what a delicious delicious meal she had made. Oh, she's a wonderful cook. She's a great cook, and yeah, yeah, some of them said, we were teenagers when we went and when we met your grandfather, and then we went down there. I said, oh my goodness. Wow. And my grandmother had told us the same stories. She said that a lot of them had come. So it was just the most awesome feeling you can get to be there where your grandfather was running and all of those other, just even in the room. I remember people through the years who were marathon winners were there in the room, and they were just all coming up to us. How you doing? Oh, blah, blah. And even now we stay in touch with a lot of them.
That's amazing.
We got invited back in 2021 because I don't know if you heard of this, but the Boston Marathon was being held on Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day.
Oh yeah, that was because of the pandemic that year.
Pandemic, exactly. Yeah. The COVID pandemic. And so that did cause some discrepancy, we'll call it, and things like that. And then the BAA did go on TV and to the media and apologize publicly. And they invited Tom Longboat's family, because he was the first Native American to win. He's from the Canadian reservation.
Yeah.
And our family, Tarzan Brown's family. So we all went, and there were Indians there from all over, mainly New England, but from all over, even from out west and stuff. And we were honored there with some items. So that was really a nice thing that they did. So even now we stay in touch with the Boston athletic people. We had a couple of monuments built in my grandfather's honor here in Rhode Island, and we invited them and they came.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool. Very cool.
Yes, yeah. So I consider them friends. They loved my grandfather, and I can see why he considered them his family. He had a BAA family, yeah. He's still a legend. He's still a
Yeah. Oh,
legend
yeah,
now,
absolutely.
even though he's been gone for since the 1975. He's still a legend there. So that really was touching.
That's great. Now, I won't take up too much more of your time. Just one final question. If
Okay.
there is just one thing that you want to tell listeners, or one thing about your grandfather that you want to make sure that everybody knows and remembers, what would that be?
Mhm. Well, there's so much I'd love to tell, but I think it's important to realize that he was one of the runners that was running during the time of the Depression. So he was running along with Johnny Kelley, what is it, Gerard Cote, and Les Parson. They were all runners in that time period. And I really admire the gentlemen of that era who were the runners because and naturally being the granddaughter of a marathon winner, we had a special love and respect for that compared to other people, who aren't even aware of it. Some people had never heard of the Boston Marathon or or even my grandfather. So I'm like, oh yeah, I could tell you so much about it now. But they ran for the love of the sport. But I think sometimes what happens now today when people are writing articles and things, a lot of times they say he could have trained better, he could have come in first, he could have did this, he could have did that, shoulda, coulda, woulda. The thing is, we have to keep in mind, and this came straight from my grandmother and his other family. He had three sisters. A lot of times he would look at whatever was on the gift table. They didn't get the Wheaties endorsements that they get today on the side of the cereal box. They didn't get a sneaker line in their name and cash up front. What they got was the trophy and that wreath around their head and their name in the paper or whatever. But a lot of times my grandfather uh would go and look at the prize and he'd come in second intentionally because if it was something that could benefit his family. One time it was his and her matching bathrobes, and he put his bathrobe there on the finish line. You'll see pictures on the internet, him and all of his buddies. He is hot probably, especially after finishing the marathon, and he's the only one with a bathrobe on. But when he came home, he gave my grandmother her bathrobe. He said, "Here, that's your matching bathrobe." And so that's funny. He knew she needed something. And also the thing is, another time he won a Frigidaire.
Oh,
So they delivered that to him. So if it's something that could benefit his family, he would do that. Of course, he was very competitive and he loved to win. But I thought back, I said, you know what? A lot of parents don't do that sometimes. I mean, a lot of parents go without naturally, but if you're gonna win, you're gonna try to come in first every time. But he would come in second on purpose if it was something that could benefit his family. So I've learned a lot of lessons from him when I think back and just things like that, thinking about something like that. And that's what I'd like to know. And if anyone has questions, they can contact me at Tarzan Brown Marathon at gmail.com. My name is Anna Brown Jackson. And I'm very thankful that you offered to do this podcast with me.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. And I will also put your email in the episode description. So if
Okay.
anybody is listening, they have additional questions, you can reach out to Anna at the email in the description. Well, thank you so much for your time, Anna. I really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Wow, what a great conversation. I really want to thank the 26.2 Foundation for helping me get in touch with Anna. And then, of course, thank Anna herself for being a guest of the podcast. that is all I have for y'all today. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on alerts, and then send this episode to someone who you would love to beat up Heartbreak Hill. Once again, it is Salty Saturday, so check out the link in the episode description to save 20% off your purchase from Salt Stick, and then join me tomorrow as we learn about the woman who proved age is just a number and some of the incredible master's records she set during her decades-long career. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Intro music goes, y'all. So, we all know how important electrodes are. Not electrodes, what the hell is that? Electrodes, oh my god, okay. Electrodes, what the okay. Ellison Brown was the fifth of 8 children. Were there 8 or were there 7? You know, I really feel like there were 7. And then here's the interview. Hi, Anna. Oh, hi. That was really cool that he was your grandpa. Yeah, he was my grandpa. Okay. And then we'll put the interview. And then join me tomorrow as we learn. No, we don't just learn because we're actually going to talk to her as we hear. Oh, wait, no. Damn it. That's a different episode. That's okay. No, we're not talking to this person. She's definitely dead. Okay. Pretend I said nothing. Okay.